The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Windsor Castle as Catherine, Princess of Wales, walked through the grand corridors with quiet confidence. Her heels clicked softly against the ancient stones, each step echoing the weight of centuries of royal tradition. She had arrived early for the quarterly family meeting, a gathering that had become increasingly tense since King Charles had ascended to the throne. Catherine paused before a magnificent portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, her late grandmother-in-law, whose piercing blue eyes seemed to follow her movements. The portrait captured the Queen's essence perfectly, dignified, unwavering, and eternally watchful. Catherine touched the simple gold band on her finger, a ring that had once belonged to the Queen herself, passed down as a symbol of continuity and blessing. The ring had been a surprise gift from the Queen just months before her passing. During a private tea at Balmoral, the Queen had quietly slipped it off her own finger and placed it in Catherine's palm. "This belonged to my mother," the Queen had said softly, her voice carrying the weight of decades. "She wore it during the darkest days of the war, and it gave her strength. I believe you will need that same strength in the years to come." Catherine had been puzzled by the Queen's words then, but now, nearly 2 years later, she was beginning to understand their meaning. The royal family was changing, and not everyone was pleased with the direction it was taking. As she entered the blue drawing room, Catherine noticed she was the first to arrive. The room, with its silk-covered walls and priceless antiques, had witnessed countless royal discussions, decisions that had shaped the course of British history. She took her usual seat near the window, where the morning light would illuminate her face during the meeting. The Queen Consort, Camilla, entered next, her presence commanding immediate attention. She wore a cream-colored suit that complemented her perfectly styled hair, and her jewelry caught the light as she moved. Behind her walked 2 of her closest advisors, women Catherine recognized but had never been formally introduced to. This was unusual. Family meetings were typically intimate affairs. Camilla's eyes met Catherine's across the room, and for a moment, something flickered in her gaze. It wasn't quite hostility, but it certainly wasn't warmth either. Catherine had noticed this change in Camilla's demeanor over the past several months. Ever since polls had shown Catherine's popularity soaring, while Camilla's remained steady but significantly lower. "Catherine, darling," Camilla said, her voice carrying the practiced sweetness that had become her trademark. "How lovely that you could join us today." "I trust William is well." "Very well, thank you," Catherine replied, noting the emphasis Camilla had placed on the word could, as if her attendance was optional rather than expected. "He's with the children this morning, helping George with his history project." King Charles entered the room with his usual brisk efficiency, followed by Princess Anne and Prince Edward. The family exchanged pleasantries, but Catherine could sense an undercurrent of tension that hadn't been present in previous meetings. Something was different today. As they settled into their seats, Catherine noticed that Camilla kept glancing at her advisors, small nods passing between them like silent signals. The Queen's ring on Catherine's finger suddenly felt warm against her skin, an odd sensation she hadn't experienced before. "Before we begin with our usual agenda," Camilla announced, rising from her chair with deliberate ceremony, "I believe we need to address some concerns that have been brought to my attention regarding the future direction of the monarchy." Catherine felt her breath catch slightly. This wasn't how these meetings typically began. Usually Charles would open with a review of recent engagements and upcoming events. Camilla taking the lead was unprecedented. "The monarchy," Camilla continued, her voice growing stronger with each word, "must present a united front to the public. We cannot afford to have individual members overshadowing the institution itself, regardless of their popularity or media appeal." The ring on Catherine's finger grew warmer, and she found herself sitting straighter in her chair. She could feel the weight of the Queen's portrait behind her, as if the late monarch was lending her strength for whatever was about to unfold. Princess Anne shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her sharp eyes moving between Camilla and Catherine. She had always been direct in her opinions, and Catherine could see she was preparing to speak. Prince Edward looked genuinely confused by the tension filling the room. King Charles, who had been reviewing papers on his tablet, looked up with surprise. "Camilla, what exactly are you suggesting?" "Catherine's work has been exemplary. The people adore her, and her charitable initiatives have brought nothing but positive attention to the crown. Camilla's smile never wavered, but Catherine caught a flash of steel in her eyes. Charles, darling, you're too close to see it clearly. The polls, the magazine covers, the constant media attention, it's creating an imbalance. The queen consort should be the primary female figure representing the monarchy, not overshadowed by a daughter-in-law, however charming she may be. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Catherine felt the ring pulse against her skin, warm and somehow reassuring. She thought of the queen's words about needing strength, and suddenly understood that this moment had been anticipated long ago. I'm not sure I understand what you're proposing, Catherine said calmly, though her heart was racing. She kept her voice steady, remembering the countless hours of media training and protocol lessons that had prepared her for difficult situations. Camilla's advisors exchanged meaningful glances, and one of them stepped forward slightly. Catherine realized this wasn't a spontaneous discussion. It was a carefully orchestrated confrontation that had been planned in advance. What I'm proposing, Camilla said, her voice taking on a harder edge, is that we need to reconsider some roles and responsibilities within the family. Some people may need to step back to allow the natural hierarchy to function as it should. The room fell silent except for the ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. Catherine could feel everyone's eyes on her, waiting for her response. The ring continued to pulse with warmth, and she found herself drawing strength from its steady rhythm against her finger. Princess Anne finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Camilla, I think you need to be very clear about what you're suggesting here. Are you asking Catherine to reduce her royal duties? The question hung in the air, and Catherine realized that this was the moment everything would change. The battle lines were being drawn, and she was about to discover who her true allies were within the family she had married into. Camilla's expression hardened as Princess Anne's direct question echoed through the ornate room. The queen consort had clearly not expected such immediate pushback from Charles's sister, who was known for her no-nonsense approach to royal matters. Anne, this isn't about reducing anyone's duties, Camilla replied, though her tone suggested otherwise. This is about establishing proper order and ensuring that the monarchy presents the correct image to the world. Catherine has been overexposed, shall we say. Catherine felt the ring grow even warmer against her skin, and with it came an unexpected surge of confidence. She had spent years walking on eggshells, carefully measuring every word and action to avoid creating waves within the family. But something about this moment felt different, as if the spirit of the late queen was guiding her. Overexposed? Catherine repeated, her voice remaining calm but carrying a new authority. I'm sorry, Camilla, but I fail to see how fulfilling my royal duties and connecting with the British people constitutes overexposure. King Charles looked increasingly uncomfortable as he watched the exchange between his wife and daughter-in-law. He had always prided himself on maintaining family harmony, but this confrontation was threatening to expose fractures he had hoped to avoid. The numbers don't lie, one of Camilla's advisors interjected, producing a folder filled with polling data and media analysis. The Princess of Wales consistently outranks the Queen Consort in popularity polls by significant margins. This creates a problematic dynamic for the monarchy's hierarchy. Prince Edward, who rarely involved himself in family politics, spoke up with genuine confusion. But surely that's a good thing for the institution. Public support strengthens the monarchy. Camilla's carefully composed mask slipped slightly, revealing a flash of frustration. Edward, you're missing the point. When a junior member overshadows senior members, it undermines the entire structure we've worked to maintain. Catherine studied Camilla's face, noting the tension around her eyes and the slight tremor in her hands. This wasn't just about protocol or hierarchy. This was personal. Camilla felt threatened, and that threat was driving her to take drastic action. What exactly are you proposing I do? Catherine asked directly, no longer willing to dance around the issue. The ring pulsed against her finger like a heartbeat, steady and strong. Camilla straightened in her chair, her moment finally arriving. I think it would be beneficial for everyone if you took a step back from high-profile engagements. Focus more on your children. Let the senior working royals handle the major charitable initiatives and state functions. A more domestic role would suit you better. The suggestion hung in the air like a poison cloud. Catherine felt her breath catch as the full implications hit her. Camilla wasn't just asking her to reduce her duties. She was asking her to essentially disappear from public view, to abandon the causes she had spent years developing and the people who had come to depend on her advocacy. Princess Anne's face flushed with anger. That's absolutely preposterous, Camilla. Catherine has built meaningful relationships with her charities. You can't simply ask someone to abandon work that's making a real difference. And the children adore her, Prince Edward added, surprising everyone with his passion. Have you seen how they light up when she visits their schools and hospitals? That's not something you can just replace. King Charles finally found his voice, though it trembled slightly with the weight of having to choose between his wife and his daughter-in-law. Camilla, I think you may be overreacting to what is essentially positive coverage for the family. Camilla's eyes flashed dangerously. Charles, you're not seeing the bigger picture. When I attend events, the cameras focus on Catherine. When we appear together, the headlines feature her, not me. How am I supposed to establish myself as queen consort when I'm constantly overshadowed? The raw honesty of Camilla's admission shocked the room into silence. Catherine felt a mixture of sympathy and dismay as she realized how deep Camilla's insecurity ran. But sympathy didn't change the fact that Camilla was asking her to sacrifice everything she had worked to build. I understand your concerns, Catherine said carefully, but I can't simply abandon the responsibilities I've taken on. The mental health initiatives, the early childhood development programs, these aren't just publicity opportunities. They're commitments I've made to people who are depending on this work. Camilla's advisor stepped forward again, this time with a different folder. Actually, we've already begun exploring ways to redistribute those responsibilities among other working royals. Princess Anne has expressed interest in expanding her charitable portfolio, and there are several other family members who could take on additional roles. Princess Anne's eyes narrowed dangerously. I most certainly have not expressed any such interest, and I resent the implication that I would be party to undermining Catherine's work. The room was becoming a battlefield, with alliances forming and dissolving by the moment. Catherine watched it all with growing amazement and dismay. She had known there were tensions within the family, but she had never imagined they would culminate in such an open confrontation. The ring on her finger suddenly grew so warm, it was almost uncomfortable. And with the heat came a flood of memories from her final conversation with Queen Elizabeth. The elderly monarch had held Catherine's hands and spoken about the challenges that lay ahead, about the importance of standing firm when others tried to diminish her light. You will face moments, the Queen had said, when people will try to make you smaller to make themselves feel larger. Remember that your duty is not to them, but to the crown and to the people who depend on you. Catherine stood up slowly, the warmth from the ring spreading through her entire body like liquid courage. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. When she spoke, her voice carried a new authority that surprised even herself. I appreciate everyone's concerns, she began, her words measured and clear, but I will not be stepping back from my duties. I will not abandon the charities and causes I've committed myself to, and I will not allow anyone to dictate how I serve this institution or this country. Camilla's face went pale, then flushed with anger. You forget yourself, Catherine. I am the queen consort, and when you make a request, Catherine interrupted something she had never done before in a family setting, I will certainly consider it. But this isn't a request. This is an ultimatum, and I'm afraid I cannot accept it. The ring pulsed one final time, so intensely that Catherine almost looked down at it. Instead, she kept her eyes fixed on Camilla, watching as the queen consort realized that her carefully planned confrontation was not going according to script. The silence that followed Catherine's defiant words was deafening. Camilla stared at her daughter-in-law with a mixture of shock and fury, clearly unprepared for such direct resistance. Her carefully orchestrated plan to diminish Catherine's role was crumbling before her eyes. I see, Camilla said finally, her voice ice cold. So this is how it's going to be. You're choosing to be difficult. Catherine felt the ring pulse against her finger again, and with it came an unexpected calm. She had crossed a line, and there was no going back now. I'm choosing to honor the commitments I've made and the trust that has been placed in me. King Charles shifted uncomfortably in his chair, torn between loyalty to his wife and recognition that Catherine's position was reasonable. Perhaps we could find a compromise. No! Camilla cut him off sharply. There is no compromise here. Either Catherine understands her proper place in this family or she doesn't. The threat was unmistakable and everyone in the room recognized it. Camilla was essentially demanding that Catherine choose between standing her ground and maintaining peace within the family. It was a calculated move designed to force Catherine into submission. Princess Anne stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Camilla, you're out of line. Catherine has done nothing but serve this family and this country with distinction. If you have a problem with your own public image, perhaps you should look at your own approach rather than trying to tear down someone else's success. Don't lecture me about public image. Camilla snapped back. I've been dealing with public scrutiny longer than any of you realize. I know what it takes to survive in this family, and what I'm seeing now is someone who doesn't understand the delicate balance required. Catherine watched this exchange with growing realization. This wasn't really about her duties or her popularity. This was about Camilla's deep-seated fears about her own legitimacy as queen consort. The woman who had once been the most hated figure in Britain was now watching another woman receive the love and acceptance that had eluded her for decades. Camilla, Catherine said softly, surprising everyone with the gentleness in her voice. I'm not your enemy. I've never tried to overshadow you or anyone else in this family. I simply try to do my best in the role I've been given. But Camilla was beyond reason now, her composure completely shattered. Your best? She laughed bitterly. Your best is making the rest of us look incompetent by comparison. Do you have any idea what it's like to walk into a room and know that everyone is wishing you were someone else? The raw pain in Camilla's voice shocked the room. Even her advisors looked uncomfortable as their carefully planned intervention devolved into an emotional outburst that revealed far more than anyone had intended. That's enough, King Charles said firmly, finally finding his authority. Camilla, you're upset and I understand why, but this isn't the way to address these concerns. Camilla whirled on her husband, her eyes blazing. Don't you dare patronize me, Charles. You brought me into this family. You made me queen consort, but you've never actually supported me when it mattered. You just let everyone else shine while I fade into the background. The accusation hung heavy in the air. Charles looked genuinely stricken, as if he was only now realizing the depth of his wife's unhappiness and insecurity. Catherine felt the ring grow warm again, and suddenly understood something that had been eluding her. The queen hadn't given her this ring just as a symbol of blessing. She had given it as protection. Elizabeth had foreseen this moment, or something like it, and had provided Catherine with a tangible reminder of her legitimacy and place in the family. I think, Catherine said carefully, that we all want the same thing, a strong, respected monarchy that serves the British people effectively, but we won't achieve that by fighting each other or asking anyone to diminish themselves. Camilla's advisor, sensing that the situation was spiraling beyond their control, attempted to intervene. Perhaps we could schedule another meeting when everyone has had time to consider. No, Camilla cut her off. This ends today, one way or another. She turned to face Catherine directly, and for a moment the younger woman saw something almost desperate in the queen consort's eyes. I'm asking you one final time, Catherine. Will you step back voluntarily, or will you force me to take more drastic measures? The threat was clear, though the specifics remained vague. Catherine felt every eye in the room focused on her, waiting to see how she would respond to this ultimate challenge to her position within the family. The ring on her finger suddenly blazed with heat, so intense that Catherine gasped slightly and looked down at it for the first time since the meeting began. What she saw made her heart stop. The simple gold band was glowing, not reflecting light from the windows or the chandeliers, but actually emanating a soft, warm light of its own. The glow was subtle but unmistakable, visible to anyone who looked directly at it. Catherine stared at the ring in amazement, remembering the Queen's words about it belonging to her mother, about it providing strength during the darkest days of the war. Had it done this before? Had Queen Elizabeth known it would do this? Catherine? Princess Anne's voice seemed to come from far away. Are you all right? Catherine looked up to find everyone staring at her with concern. She realized she had been silent for nearly a minute, transfixed by the glowing ring. But as she met their gazes, she felt a surge of confidence and determination, unlike anything she had ever experienced. I'm perfectly all right, she said, and her voice carried a new quality that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. And I have my answer for you, Camilla. The queen consort leaned forward slightly, perhaps sensing that something fundamental had shifted in the dynamic of the room. "I will not be stepping back," Catherine continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I will not be diminished or sidelined or asked to make myself smaller so that others can feel larger. I serve this crown in this country, and I will continue to do so with everything I have." As she spoke, the ring's glow seemed to intensify slightly, though Catherine was the only one who could see it clearly from her angle. But somehow she sensed that everyone in the room could feel its presence, could sense that something had fundamentally changed. Camilla's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, anger, fear, and finally something that looked almost like recognition. For just a moment she looked at Catherine as if seeing her for the first time. The glow from the ring intensified, becoming visible to everyone in the room. Gasps echoed through the ornate chamber as the impossible sight registered with each person present. Camilla stepped backward, her face draining of color as she stared at Catherine's hand in disbelief. "What is that?" Prince Edward whispered, his voice barely audible above the ticking of the antique clock. Catherine looked down at her hand, watching in amazement as the simple gold band continued to emit its mysterious light. The warmth had spread up her arm and through her entire body, filling her with a sense of connection to something far greater than herself. "It's impossible," Camilla breathed, her earlier anger replaced by something approaching awe. "Gold doesn't... it can't..." Princess Anne moved closer to Catherine, her practical nature warring with the evidence of her own eyes. "May I?" she asked softly, gesturing toward the ring. Catherine nodded and extended her hand. As Anne leaned in to examine the glowing band, her expression shifted from skepticism to wonder. "I can feel warmth radiating from it," she said, her voice filled with amazement. "But there's no electrical source, no mechanism that could produce this." King Charles rose from his chair slowly, drawn by the inexplicable phenomenon. "Catherine, where did you get that ring?" "Your mother gave it to me," Catherine replied, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Just months before she passed. She said it had belonged to her mother, and that I would need its strength in the years to come." A profound silence fell over the room as the implications of Catherine's words sank in. The ring had belonged to the Queen Mother, had been passed down through generations of royal women, and now it was manifesting something that defied all logical explanation. Camilla's advisor, who had been standing frozen in shock, finally found her voice. "There must be some scientific explanation. Perhaps the metal has some kind of unusual properties, or maybe it's reacting to electromagnetic fields." But even as she spoke, her voice trailed off. No scientific explanation could account for what they were witnessing. The ring continued to glow with steady, peaceful light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with Catherine's heartbeat. "Tell me exactly what my mother said to you," King Charles requested, his voice heavy with emotion. Catherine could see that he was struggling to process not just the supernatural aspect of what was happening, but also the realization that his mother had anticipated these events and had taken steps to protect Catherine. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment, remembering that afternoon at Balmoral with crystal clarity. She said the ring had given her mother strength during the darkest days of the war. "She told me that I would face moments when people would try to make me smaller, to make themselves feel larger, and that my duty was not to them but to the crown and to the people who depend on me." As she spoke these words, the ring's glow seemed to pulse brighter, as if responding to the memory of its previous owner's wisdom. Camilla had backed away until she was pressed against the silk-covered wall, staring at Catherine as if she had transformed into something otherworldly. "This isn't real," Camilla said, though her voice lacked conviction. "This is some kind of trick, some kind of technology." "Camilla," Princess Anne said firmly, "we're all seeing the same thing. This is happening, whether we understand it or not." Prince Edward had pulled out his phone and was attempting to record the phenomenon, but the device seemed unable to capture the glow. The screen showed only a normal gold ring, despite the obvious light emanating from it in person. "It won't photograph," he said in amazement. "The camera can't see it, but we all can." Catherine felt a strange sense of peace washing over her despite the chaos around her. The ring's warmth was comforting rather than alarming, and she found herself thinking of Queen Elizabeth's steady presence during times of crisis. The late monarch had faced countless challenges during her reign, from world wars to family scandals, and had weathered them all with grace and determination. Perhaps, Catherine said softly. "This is exactly what your mother intended. She knew there would come a time when I would need to stand firm against those who would try to diminish my role or my voice. She gave me this ring as a reminder that I have the right and the responsibility to serve, regardless of who might find that inconvenient." Camilla's expression was a mixture of fear and fury. "You're suggesting that Elizabeth is somehow… what? Reaching from beyond the grave to support you against me?" "I'm suggesting," Catherine replied calmly, "that your mother-in-law was a wise woman who understood the importance of ensuring that those who serve the crown are protected and empowered to do their best work." King Charles moved closer to Catherine, studying the ring with the fascination of a man trying to reconcile the impossible with his understanding of reality. "Mother never mentioned anything like this to me, but then again, she had her own way of handling family matters." The ring suddenly pulsed with an even brighter light, and Catherine felt a rush of memories that weren't her own. Images flashed through her mind. The Queen Mother during the Blitz, standing resolute as bombs fell around London. Queen Elizabeth as a young woman, taking on responsibilities beyond her years. Generations of royal women facing challenges and emerging stronger. "I can see them," Catherine whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "The women who wore this ring before me. They all faced moments like this. Moments when they had to choose between backing down and standing firm." Camilla's advisor had moved toward the door, clearly uncomfortable with the supernatural turn the meeting had taken. "Perhaps we should postpone this discussion until…" "No," Camilla said sharply, though her voice trembled. "This ends now. I don't care if that ring belonged to Napoleon himself and is glowing like the northern lights. This is about respect and hierarchy, and I will not be undermined by parlor tricks." But even as she spoke, Camilla's conviction seemed to be wavering. The ring's glow was steady and undeniable, and its message was clear to everyone present. Catherine was under the protection of something far greater than any earthly authority. Princess Anne stepped forward, her voice carrying the authority of decades of royal service. "Camilla, I think it's time you listen to what this family has been trying to tell you. Catherine has earned her place here through her dedication, her compassion, and her tireless work on behalf of the British people. This ring, whatever it represents, is simply confirming what we all already know." "And what is that?" Camilla demanded, though her earlier confidence had clearly been shaken. "That some people are meant to shine," Anne replied simply, "and trying to dim their light doesn't make anyone else brighter. It just makes the world a darker place." The ring pulsed one final time, so brightly that it illuminated Catherine's entire face with a soft golden glow. Then gradually the light began to fade, leaving only the simple gold band that it had always appeared to be. But everyone in the room knew they had witnessed something extraordinary, something that would change the dynamics of their family forever. Catherine felt the warmth slowly recede, but the confidence and strength it had given her remained. She looked around the room at the shocked faces of her family members, knowing that everything had changed in the space of a few impossible minutes. In the aftermath of the ring's mysterious display, the blue drawing room felt charged with an energy that had nothing to do with the electrical fixtures. Camilla stood against the wall, her carefully composed demeanor completely shattered. Her advisors whispered frantically among themselves, clearly out of their depth in dealing with something that defied all logical explanation. Catherine remained seated, though she felt fundamentally changed by what had just occurred. The ring had returned to its normal appearance, but she could still feel its presence like a warm ember against her skin. More importantly, she felt connected to something larger than herself, a lineage of strong women who had faced impossible challenges and emerged victorious. King Charles was the first to break the heavy silence that had settled over the room. "I think," he said slowly, "that we all need to take some time to process what we've just witnessed." "Process?" Camilla laughed, but the sound was bitter and strained. "Charles, we just watched your daughter-in-law's jewelry perform supernatural light shows. There's no processing that. There's only accepting that everything I thought I knew about this family was apparently incomplete." Prince Edward, ever the practical one, had been examining his phone with confusion. "I've tried recording from every angle, but the device shows nothing unusual. It's as if the phenomenon exists only for human eyes." Princess Anne nodded thoughtfully. "Mother always said there were aspects of the monarchy that couldn't be explained in conventional terms. I assumed she was speaking metaphorically about the weight of tradition and responsibility. Perhaps I was wrong." Catherine stood slowly, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room tracking her movement. The confidence she had gained during the ring's display remained with her, but she also felt the enormous weight of what had just happened. She was no longer simply Catherine, Princess of Wales. She was now the bearer of something extraordinary, something that connected her to generations of royal women who had faced their own trials. "Camilla," she said softly, "I want you to understand something. I never asked for any of this. I didn't seek out popularity or acclaim. I simply tried to serve this institution and this country to the best of my ability." Camilla's eyes flashed with renewed anger. "Oh, please don't give me the innocent act now. You've just demonstrated that you have some kind of supernatural backing, and you expect me to believe you had nothing to do with it." "I had as much to do with it as you did," Catherine replied calmly. The ring chose to reveal itself at this moment in response to this situation, but I think we both know why it happened. The queen consort pushed herself away from the wall, her composure gradually returning as her shock transformed back into determination. "Enlighten me." Catherine felt the ring warm slightly against her finger, as if encouraging her to speak the truth that everyone in the room already understood. "It happened because what you're asking me to do goes against everything this institution is supposed to represent. You're asking me to abandon people who depend on me, to walk away from work that makes a real difference, all because my success makes you uncomfortable. How dare you?" Camilla began, but King Charles raised his hand for silence. "Let her finish," he said quietly, and there was something in his voice that brooked no argument. Catherine continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "The monarchy doesn't exist to make any of us feel important or secure in our positions. It exists to serve the British people. When we start putting our personal feelings and insecurities ahead of that service, we fail in our most fundamental duty." The ring pulsed once, briefly, as if acknowledging the truth of her words. Camilla noticed the subtle glow and took an involuntary step backward. "You think you're so perfect," Camilla said, her voice filled with years of accumulated frustration. "You think you understand what it means to serve, what it costs to be in this family. But you've never had to fight for acceptance the way I have. You've never had to prove yourself worthy of love and respect." For the first time since the confrontation began, Catherine felt a genuine pang of sympathy for Camilla. She could see the deep wounds that drove the queen consort's actions, the insecurity that came from decades of public scrutiny and conditional acceptance. "You're right," Catherine said, surprising everyone in the room. "I've never had to fight for acceptance the way you have. I was welcomed into this family with open arms, and I've been blessed with public support from the beginning. But that doesn't mean I haven't worked hard, and it doesn't mean I should apologize for the gifts I've been given." Princess Anne nodded approvingly. "Catherine's right, Camilla. Trying to tear someone else down doesn't build you up. If you want to improve your public image, focus on your own work, not on undermining hers." Camilla's chief advisor finally spoke up, her voice carefully measured. "Perhaps we've all gotten a bit carried away today. The stress of public life can make us all say things we don't necessarily mean." "Oh, but I did mean it," Camilla said firmly. "Every word. I meant it when I asked Catherine to step back, and I mean it now when I say that what happened here today doesn't change anything. Ring or no ring, supernatural light show or not, this family still has a hierarchy, and that hierarchy matters." The room fell silent again, as everyone absorbed the implications of Camilla's words. Despite everything she had witnessed, despite the clear message from the ring and the obvious support for Catherine from other family members, the queen consort was not backing down. King Charles looked deeply troubled as he watched his wife dig in her heels. "Camilla, surely you can see that this approach isn't working. Catherine has done nothing wrong, and asking her to diminish herself serves no one." "It serves me," Camilla replied bluntly. "And whether you want to admit it or not, Charles, what serves me serves you. I am your wife, I am the queen consort, and my success or failure reflects on your reign." The naked honesty of her statement shocked the room. Camilla had finally dropped all pretense and revealed the core of her motivation, not love of country or dedication to service, but personal ambition and the desire to secure her own legacy. Catherine felt the ring warm against her finger one final time, and with that warmth came a crystal-clear understanding of what she needed to do. The supernatural display had been impressive, but it was only the beginning. The real test would be how she chose to use the strength and authority that had been given to her. "I understand your position." "Camilla," Catherine said, her voice carrying a new quality that made everyone in the room look at her with surprise. But I'm afraid I can't accommodate it. I will continue to serve this crown and this country in the way I believe is right, regardless of how that makes you feel about your own position. The gauntlet had been thrown down once and for all. Camilla stood on one side, demanding submission and diminishment. Catherine stood on the other, backed by the mysterious power of the ring and the support of family members who had witnessed something extraordinary. But as the two women faced each other across the ornate room, everyone present understood that this was only the beginning of a battle that would reshape the royal family forever. The tension in the blue drawing room had reached a breaking point. Two women stood facing each other across centuries of royal tradition, each representing a different vision of what the monarchy should be. Catherine, with her quiet strength and mysterious ring, embodied a future built on genuine service and connection with the people. Camilla, desperate to secure her legacy, represented the old ways of hierarchy and control. King Charles appeared torn between his loyalty to his wife and his recognition that Catherine's position was not only reasonable, but morally correct. Princess Anne and Prince Edward flanked Catherine, their support clear despite the potential consequences. The advisors who had arrived with such confidence now looked uncertain, as if questioning whether they had chosen the right side in this family civil war. "I think," Princess Anne said into the charged silence, "that we all need to be very clear about what's happening here. Camilla, you've essentially issued an ultimatum to Catherine. Step back or face consequences. Catherine has refused. So what exactly are these consequences you're threatening?" Camilla's eyes narrowed as she realized she was being called to account for her threats. She had been operating on the assumption that her position as queen consort would give her the authority to reshape the family dynamics to her liking. Now she was discovering that authority meant nothing without support. "There are many ways to make someone's position uncomfortable," Camilla replied carefully. "Invitations that don't arrive, events where space is limited, charitable patronages that might need to be reassigned for efficiency purposes." The pettiness of the threats hung in the air like a foul smell. Everyone in the room could see that Camilla was prepared to use bureaucratic manipulation and social exclusion to force Catherine into submission. It was a strategy that might have worked in different circumstances, but the supernatural events of the afternoon had fundamentally altered the playing field. Catherine felt the ring pulse gently against her finger, and with it came a sense of calm certainty about how to respond. "I see," she said simply. "So you're proposing to punish me for refusing to abandon my duties by making it more difficult for me to perform those duties. Do you understand how that sounds?" Prince Edward, who had been quietly observing the entire confrontation, suddenly spoke up with more force than anyone had ever heard from him. "It sounds like sabotage. It sounds like putting personal grievances ahead of the good of the institution." Camilla whirled to face him, surprised by his intervention. "Edward, this doesn't concern you." "Of course it concerns me," he replied firmly. "This is my family, and what you're proposing would damage us all. Do you think the public won't notice if Catherine suddenly disappears from major events? Do you think people won't ask questions if her charitable work is mysteriously redistributed?" The practical implications of Camilla's threats were becoming clear to everyone. Any attempt to sideline Catherine would inevitably become public knowledge, and the resulting scandal would damage the entire royal family far more than any perceived hierarchy issues ever could. King Charles finally found his voice, and when he spoke, his tone carried the full weight of his position as monarch. "Camilla, I cannot and will not support any effort to undermine Catherine's work or position within this family. What you're suggesting would be harmful to the crown and contrary to everything we stand for." The words hit Camilla like a physical blow. She stared at her husband in disbelief, clearly not having anticipated that he would choose Catherine's side so decisively. "Charles, you can't be serious. After everything we've been through together, after everything I've sacrificed to be part of this family, what you've sacrificed." Princess Anne interrupted, her voice sharp with anger. "Camilla, you married the future King of England. You became queen consort. Exactly what have you sacrificed that the rest of us haven't?" The question hung in the air, exposing the fundamental flaw in Camilla's reasoning. She had indeed made sacrifices to join the royal family, but so had everyone else. The difference was that the others had embraced their roles as service, rather than seeking to use them for personal validation. Catherine watched this exchange with growing sadness. She could see that Camilla's insecurity ran so deep that no amount of titles or recognition would ever be enough to fill the void. The queen consort was fighting a battle against her own demons, but she was choosing to wage that war against people who should have been her allies. "This isn't about what I've sacrificed," Camilla said, her voice breaking slightly. "This is about respect. This is about recognition. This is about not being overshadowed in my own home by someone who will never understand what it cost me to get here." The raw pain in her voice created a moment of profound silence. Even Catherine felt moved by the obvious depth of Camilla's suffering. But she also understood that this pain could not justify hurting others or damaging the institution they all served. "I do understand," Catherine said softly, "more than you might think. But Camilla, respect can't be demanded or forced. It has to be earned through actions, through service, through genuine care for others. You can't gain respect by diminishing someone else." The ring on Catherine's finger began to glow again, but this time the light was softer, more gentle than before. It seemed to fill the room with a sense of peace and wisdom that was almost tangible. Even Camilla seemed affected by it, her defensive posture relaxing slightly as she stared at the mysterious phenomenon. "Perhaps," Catherine continued, her voice carrying new authority, "it's time for all of us to focus on what really matters. We have an opportunity to serve the British people, to make their lives better, to represent the best of what this country can be. That's not something any of us can do alone. It requires all of us working together." King Charles nodded slowly, recognizing the wisdom in Catherine's words. "She's right. We're stronger when we support each other rather than competing with each other." Camilla looked around the room, seeing the faces of family members who had chosen Catherine's side in this conflict. Her advisors stood near the door, clearly eager to leave. The isolation of her position was becoming undeniably clear. "I won't be made to feel guilty for wanting my rightful place," she said, but the fight had gone out of her voice. "No one is asking you to feel guilty," Catherine replied gently. "We're asking you to find your place through service rather than through conflict. There's room for all of us to shine, Camilla. The monarchy is big enough for both of us." As Catherine spoke these words, the ring's glow intensified one final time, then slowly faded back to normal. But the message was clear. This was the path forward, the way to resolve the crisis that had threatened to tear the family apart. Camilla stood in silence for a long moment, weighing her options. She could continue to fight, could try to implement her threats and force the confrontation to its bitter conclusion, or she could choose to step back from the brink and find a way to coexist with the woman whose success had triggered her deepest insecurities. The choice was hers, and everyone in the room waited to see which path the queen consort would choose. The future of the royal family hung in the balance, dependent on whether one woman could find the strength to overcome her own fears and embrace a more generous vision of service. Outside the windows of the blue drawing room, the afternoon sun was setting over Windsor Castle, casting long shadows across the ancient stones. Inside, a family waited to see whether they would emerge from this crisis united or forever divided by jealousy and ambition. The glowing ring had delivered its message, but the ultimate resolution would depend on the choices made by very human hearts, struggling with very human emotions.